When I walked into my daughter's cafe and found her on her knees, scrubbing the toilets she was supposed to own, something inside me went painfully still. Her mother-in-law called it training, as if humiliation were a skill. She had no idea I'd already begun a quiet revenge she'd never see coming, and that moment was the start of everything. Before I continue, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, and maybe share where you're listening from. At my age, every story carries a piece of my life, and knowing you're here to listen means more than you may ever realize. You spend your whole life trying to give your children something better than what you had. That's what I used to tell myself, especially on the mornings when my knees ached a little more, and the coffee tasted a little burnt, and the world felt heavier than it used to. But then I'd think of Marina, my girl, and somehow the day felt lighter again. I'm an old man now, older than I ever expected to be, and I've lived long enough to know dreams don't come easy. Mine certainly didn't. For decades, I worked as an inspector, walking into kitchens at sunrise, clipboard under my arm, doing the thankless job of keeping places safe. Most folks didn't like me much. Some resented me, but I slept well knowing the work mattered. And through all those years, I saved what I could. Not much, just enough to matter. I didn't spend it on vacations or new hobbies or the things men my age often chase. I saved it for her, for Marina. When she told me she wanted her own cafe, her own place where people could sit, breathe, and feel warm for a moment, something inside me lifted. She didn't want luxury. She wanted a life she built with her hands, a place with sunlight on the windows and the smell of cinnamon in the morning. I remember the day we found the building. Nothing special. A small corner space with peeling paint and a window that whistled when the wind pushed through. But she stepped inside, looked around quietly, and whispered, "Dad, I can see it. I can see everything." And that was enough for me. I emptied the account I'd protected for 30 years. Every penny. I didn't hesitate, didn't second guess it. I handed her the cashier's check like it was the easiest thing I'd ever done. And the truth, it was. Watching her hold those keys, hearing the soft, shaky breath she took, it felt better than anything I'd ever bought for myself. She hugged me tight, grateful, trembling a little, because dreams are heavier than people think. Back then, everything felt hopeful. We painted the walls, we unpacked dishes, we hung the sign above the door, Sunrise Hearth, hand-painted by a friend who refused a single dollar. Most mornings I sat in the corner, sipping my coffee, watching Marina greet customers with that nervous excitement new business owners carry. And I'd think, this is it, Harvey. You did something good. Her husband, Evan, was around sometimes, a quiet man, not unkind, just soft in ways that made me uneasy. He always looked toward his mother before making decisions. I didn't love that, but families are complicated, and I tried to stay in my lane. Then came Gloria, his mother. Always dressed sharp, always smiling a little too wide. She spoke with sweetness but walked like she owned the air around her. I didn't dislike her at first. She said she wanted to guide the young couple. I bit my tongue. Guidance isn't always a bad thing. But little by little, I noticed things. A comment here, a correction there, a moment when Marina's shoulders tensed as soon as Gloria walked into the room. I tried to brush it off. Old men see ghosts sometimes, especially when they're protective. So I focused on the good, the cinnamon rolls, the smell of fresh bread, the laughter at the window tables. Life felt steady then, predictable. Every morning, the same routine: wake up, boil water, press a shirt, walk to the cafe. I'd pass the mirror and see an older man staring back, hair thinning, eyes softer, but still standing, still useful, still needed. Peace has a strange nature, though. It's fragile. It slips away quietly, without warning. Sometimes it leaves while you're distracted by something small and sweet, like the sound of your daughter humming while she kneads dough. And one morning, it was gone. I didn't sense the storm building. Didn't hear the quiet crack forming under everything she'd built. All I knew was that the sun felt warm on my shoulders, and my coffee didn't taste quite as bitter. And I was proud, deeply proud, of the life my daughter was carving for herself. But peace fools you like that. It makes you trust the ground even as it shifts beneath your feet. And that morning, as I locked my door and walked toward Sunrise Hearth, I had no idea how much was about to break. But that peace was about to end. The morning everything changed didn't look any different from the others. Same low clouds. Same hint of rain drifting through the air. Same slow steps from my porch to the sidewalk. But sometimes the world shifts while you're still tying your shoes, and you don't feel it until something breaks. I reached Sunrise Hearth a little after 10. The front window looked dim, not closed, just muted. Like the light inside wasn't sure it belonged there anymore. I pushed the door open. The bell gave a thin, tired chime, as if even it didn't want to intrude on whatever waited inside. And then, I saw her. My daughter. On her knees, scrubbing the base of a toilet with her bare hands. Her apron was crooked. Her hair clung to her forehead in damp strands. Her wrist trembled with each slow, circular motion of the brush. For a moment my breath simply stopped. I stepped forward, careful, as though moving too quickly might make the scene collapse into something worse. "Marina?" My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. She froze. Didn't look up at first. Just inhaled, shaky, embarrassed, like she needed a second to gather what little pride she had left. When she finally turned to me, her eyes were wide, apologetic in a way no daughter should ever feel toward her father.
"Dad, I didn't hear you come in."
I swallowed hard.
What are you doing down there? Where's the staff? Where's Evan? What's going on?"
Before she could answer, heels clacked across the floor. Sharp, rhythmic, confident. Gloria. She appeared with a practiced smile, the kind people wear when they enjoy being in control. "Oh, Harvey, good morning. She's just learning the basics. Every successful business owner needs to start from the ground up." The words hit me like something cold. "Basics," I repeated quietly. "This is her cafe." Gloria laughed softly, waving her hand as if dismissing a child's confusion. "Well, technically, she's still a trainee. I can't have her greeting customers until she understands the fundamentals." Marina's shoulders curled inward when she said trainee. My daughter, the woman who dreamed up every inch of this place, reduced to a mop and a bucket. I steadied my voice. "I thought she was managing the front today." Gloria's smile thinned. "That was before she signed the partnership adjustment. Didn't she tell you?" I turned to Marina. She looked away. A cold weight settled in my chest. "What partnership adjustment?" Marina opened her mouth, but Gloria stepped in front of her like she owned the right to speak first. "A simple contract," she said sweetly. "Standard. It just ensures a clear leadership hierarchy. After all, she's young. She has to learn before she leads." My tone sharpened, even though my volume didn't. "Let me see the contract." Gloria's brows lifted. "That won't be necessary. It's private." I didn't blink. I didn't ask if it was necessary. For a second, just a second, her expression slipped. Then Evan walked in from the hallway. He froze when he saw me. "Harvey, hey, we weren't expecting you." I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on Marina. "Stand up," I whispered. "Please." She rose slowly, wiping her hands on her apron, eyes glossy with the kind of humiliation that sits deep. "Dad, I'm okay," she murmured. "It's temporary, I'm learning." "Learning what?" My voice cracked. "How to let people walk all over you." Evan rubbed the back of his neck. "Gloria thinks it's important she starts at the bottom. It's good training. My mom built her own business." I cut him off. I didn't give my life savings so she could be treated like hired help. Gloria stepped closer, voice dripping with false patience. "Your savings were appreciated." But this is about discipline. Structure. If she wants to be taken seriously, she needs to do the work. I stared at her until she shifted. Then I turned back to Marina. "Is this what you want?" A father's question, soft, but the kind that reveals everything. Her lips parted, but no sound came. And in that silence, I heard every answer she was afraid to give. But the worst moment was still waiting. Gloria crossed her arms, tilted her chin, and said in a voice sharp enough to cut, "If she can't handle simple cleaning tasks, perhaps she isn't ready to own anything yet." That was the line. Not the cleaning. Not the contract. Not even Evan's helpless silence. It was that sentence. Smug, cruel, dripping with certainty. Something inside me stilled. Not with rage, but with a quiet understanding. A line had been crossed. And I knew, right then, I would not stay silent. And deeper still, a colder truth settled. Something in me went very, very quiet. The house felt different that evening. Quieter. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights low, my jacket still on, hands resting on the wood as if I needed to anchor myself to something solid. Sometimes, after a blow like that, you don't think, you just sit. Let the air settle. Let your heart catch up. Marina's face kept returning to me, not the tears, not the dirt on her hands, but that small, apologetic smile she tried to force when she said, "I'm okay." No daughter should ever learn to apologize for her own humiliation. I made tea even though I didn't want tea. It's a habit, a ritual you fall back on when the world tilts. Boil water. Hold the mug with both hands. Let warmth pass through the palms, since nothing else feels warm. When the kettle clicked off, the sound echoed through the kitchen. Too loud for a small thing. I poured anyway, though the steam felt wrong, thinner than usual, carrying a faint bitterness. Or maybe that was just me. I took the mug to the living room and sat in my old armchair, the one that creaked like it had opinions of its own. The clock on the wall ticked with a slow, heavy rhythm. Outside, traffic passed in waves, soft, distant, uncaring. Grief doesn't always arrive with tears. Sometimes it comes as a heaviness in the ribs, a stillness behind the eyes. I closed mine for a moment, and in that half-dark, my mind slipped back to another time, another sacrifice. Years ago, when Marina was little, she'd wanted a violin, not a toy one, the real kind. Her music teacher said she had an ear for it, and she lit up in a way children rarely do. I didn't have the money then, not even close, but I worked extra nights, took shifts that left my body aching. I saved in small envelopes on a shelf, lining them up like stepping stones toward her smile. The day I brought home that violin case, she had hugged me so hard I lost my balance. Her joy felt like a window opening in a winter room. I thought of that girl, bright, fearless, full of promise, and then I pictured the woman I saw today, crouched on a tiled floor, taught to believe she was less than she was. The contrast hurt more than anything Gloria said. I rubbed my forehead, letting my hand linger there. Age does strange things to you. It dulls some pains, but sharpens others. A soft rain began tapping against the window, slow at first, then steadier. The kind of rain that brings reflection, unwilling or not. I stared at the glass, watching drops race each other downward. Somewhere between those raindrops, a thought formed, faint but firm. This can't continue. But the next thought, the one that follows after the anger, was quieter. How did it get this far? Where did she lose her voice? Where did I lose mine? Guilt trickled in, the slippery kind, the kind you don't want to admit. Had I given her too much space? Had I trusted too easily? Had I ignored small signs because I wanted to believe she was happy? I exhaled slowly. When you're older, you learn that pain rarely arrives alone. It brings companions, memory, regret, responsibility. I stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out an old photo of Marina at 17, holding that same violin. Her first recital. Her smile was pure sunlight. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb. Small motions speak loud truths. She had always been strong. Always. But even strong people break differently. Quietly. In ways you don't notice until it's nearly too late. A car passed outside, headlights sweeping across the wall like a slow-moving thought. I set the photo down, straighter this time. My throat tightened. I wasn't just grieving what happened today. I was grieving the years she spent shrinking herself without telling me. All the moments she must have swallowed hurt and said nothing. All the nights she probably cried without calling. And the man she married, the man who should have protected her, stood by with his hands in his pockets. That stung deeper than any contract. I sat back down, folding my hands, letting the silence speak to me. Letting the hurt settle into something more solid. Then, slowly, something shifted. Anger didn't rise. Not flames, not fire. Just clarity. A steadying. A quiet understanding of what needed to happen next. I didn't slam my fist. I didn't pace. I didn't shout at the walls. I simply breathed. Once, twice, and then I whispered, more to myself than anyone. I need to think very carefully. Because revenge, when done right, isn't anger. It's discipline. It's timing. It's patience shaped into justice. And my patience had limits. But that night, alone in the half-light of my living room, I could feel something returning to me, a part of myself I hadn't used in years, the part that didn't shake, the part that didn't doubt, the part that had protected her before. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the rain speak. Some nights I whispered her name, not in anger, but in disbelief. How could they do this to her? How could they think I would do nothing? Morning came slowly, pressing through the blinds like a reluctant truth. I hadn't slept much, not because I was restless, but because my mind had settled into a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years, the stillness that comes right before a decision. I made coffee the way I always do, quietly, deliberately. The smell rose through the kitchen, steady and familiar, grounding me. When I carried the cup to the table, I noticed my hands weren't shaking. Not anymore. I sat down, spread the papers in front of me, notes, business filings, receipts, dates. Everything I'd observed at the cafe. Everything Gloria believed I was too old to notice. Age doesn't dull your instincts. It sharpens them. I took a slow sip, set the mug aside, and reached for a pen. My handwriting wasn't what it used to be, but the meaning was steady. 4 steps. No shortcuts. No noise. No anger. I underlined each one. Revenge, proper revenge, was never a storm. It was architecture. I leaned back and let my mind move with intention. All those years as an inspector, all those violations I'd cited, all those owners who thought rules were suggestions, came back with surprising clarity. That part of me, the part Gloria dismissed, hadn't died. It had just been sleeping. I opened my old filing box, the one I kept tucked behind winter coats. Inside were decades of inspection manuals, contact lists, sample forms, pages yellowed by time but sharp as ever in purpose. I placed them on the table, one by one, quietly, carefully. The room felt different now, as if it understood what I was building. I glanced at the notes I'd made the night before, details from Marina's story, things she signed without knowing the weight, names she trusted, small remarks that had slipped from Gloria's mouth like loose nails falling from a rotten plank. Every piece mattered. I picked up the partnership file, flipped through the pages slowly, letting each section settle in my mind. Beneath the legal phrasing and polite wording, I could see the shape of the trap. Ownership percentages, management authority, profit distribution, decision-making rights. Gloria hadn't just twisted the knife. She'd built the knife herself, but even the sharpest blade had a handle, something to hold on to. I marked 3 sections with blue tabs, then 2 more with red. Patterns emerged, clauses inserted at odd angles, phrases that seemed harmless until you read them twice. I knew what they were, manufactured leverage, but leverage cuts both ways when someone knows where to lean. I took a breath, let it out slowly. All right, I murmured. Let's begin. I drafted my first outline, simple, steady, deliberate. Observe. Verify. Document. Not glamorous, not dramatic. But truth rarely is. I ran my finger along the paper. Then came the deeper work. Phone numbers. Old contacts. People who remembered me not just as an inspector but as a man who did things by the book. People who would listen if I called, not for favors but for procedure. Procedure is a powerful thing when used with intention. I reached for my phone, paused. Not yet. Timing mattered. Always. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched the public business registry. Names appeared, filings, dates, amendments. One date stood out, oddly timed, filed before conversations with Marina took place. I felt a quiet, cold recognition wash over me. Gloria hadn't stumbled into this. She'd planned it, structured it, filed the paperwork weeks before Marina even touched a pen. The betrayal deepened, but strangely, my heartbeat stayed steady. Because clarity can feel like calm. I highlighted the date, saved a copy, placed it gently on the growing pile of evidence. My plan grew piece by piece, not as an act of retaliation, but as a record of truth. When I needed a moment to breathe, I walked to the window. The morning light fell across the street in long, soft lines. Cars passed. Birds moved along the wires. Life looked unchanged. But inside me, something shifted. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel helpless. I didn't feel old. I didn't feel outmatched. I felt ready. And that readiness came with a strange peace. A quiet resolve that wrapped around me like a familiar coat. I returned to the table, opened a fresh page in my notebook, and wrote the title I had avoided until now, a reminder of why this mattered. When I found my daughter scrubbing toilets in her own cafe, It wasn't just a phrase. It was the truth, the kind that didn't need exaggeration. I wrote beneath it, "This will not happen again." By late afternoon, the plan was no longer just an idea. It was a structure, measured, aligned, supported by facts, documents, and purpose. I gathered the papers into neat stacks, clipped each section, placed everything in a folder thick enough to feel like resolve in my hands. The sun dipped lower, brushing the room with amber light. I closed the folder and rested my palm on top of it. The stage was set, and all I had to do was wait. I chose a calm day to walk back into Sunrise Hearth. No rain, no wind, just a wide blue sky that felt steady enough to carry what needed to happen. I didn't bring anger with me, just a folder, thick, organized, and quiet. The bell above the door chimed when I entered, its tone brighter than the day I found Marina on her knees. Customers chatted softly. Cups clinked. Life moved gently in the background. Good. Justice should unfold in the open. Marina was at the counter this time, not the floor. Still not smiling, but standing. That mattered. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Dad, you're here early." "I know," I said, offering a small nod. "Is Gloria around?" The softness in her gaze flickered, replaced by a shadow of something she tried to hide. Fear, maybe embarrassment. Maybe both. "She's in the office," she whispered. "Good," I replied. For a moment, I rested my hand over hers on the counter, a gesture that said everything. "You're not alone, not today." Then I walked to the back hallway. The office door was half open. I knocked anyway. Gloria looked up from her desk, surprise flashing in her eyes like a camera bulb. "Harvey, what a pleasant surprise." Her voice was honey on marble, sweet, but cold underneath. I stepped inside and closed the door gently behind me. "You and I need to review some documents," I said. She smiled as if she'd been expecting a confrontation she believed she'd already won. "Of course. What documents?" I placed the folder on her desk. The weight of it made a soft, meaningful thud. "These." She flipped it open, still smiling. Until she wasn't. Her eyes moved faster with each page. The filings, the dates, the amendments she'd hidden, the ownership clauses she'd buried deep in legal phrasing, the violations she never expected anyone to notice. Finally, she looked up. Where did you get this?" "Public registry," I said softly. "And from your own cafe. You left more breadcrumbs than you realized." Her jaw tightened. This is a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "No, it's a pattern." I slid one document toward her, the one with the filing date that predated Marina's signature. She hesitated before touching it. "You filed the ownership change before she even saw the contract," I said. "That alone is enough for a regulatory review." Her expression faltered, just briefly, but enough. I continued, calm and steady. "You listed her as a trainee, despite her proven managerial role. You reassigned profit rights without disclosure, and you altered access codes to restrict her from entering her own storage areas." Gloria swallowed. "You don't understand how business works." I tilted my head. "No, you don't understand how process works." Silence settled like fine dust across the room. Then I reached into the folder again and placed 3 printed notices on her desk. Each stamped, each signed, each prepared legally and properly. Her eyes widened as she read the headers. Notice of potential inspection request for partnership documentation review. Preliminary inquiry into non-disclosed amendments. She looked up at me, voice unsteady. You wouldn't." "Gloria," I said gently. "I already did." She blinked. "Who did you talk to?" "People who remember me," I said. "And people who don't take kindly to predatory paperwork." Her breath quickened. Then I leaned forward, not threatening, not loud, just unmistakably certain. "I'm giving you one chance to correct every amendment. Return her ownership, restore her access, and remove all trainee classifications. Today." Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came, because she saw something she hadn't expected. Not an old man she could dismiss, but someone who understood exactly how her tower had been built and exactly where to press to make it crack. Finally, she whispered, "What if I refuse?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean closer. I simply tapped the inspection notice with one finger. "Then this becomes public record." Her eyes flickered with panic. the quiet kind people feel when they realize their power depends entirely on no one looking too closely. After a long silence, her shoulders slumped. "I'll correct the documents," she said quietly. "All of them," I replied. "Yes," she whispered. I gathered my folder, stood, and nodded once. "Good. Then we're done here." I walked out of the office with the same calm I walked in with. No victory grin, no dramatic turn, just a quiet release, like exhaling after holding your breath far too long. When I entered the cafe again, Marina looked up, nervous. I walked to her, placed a hand over hers, and said, "It's handled." Her eyes softened, filling with something fragile and bright. "Dad, what did you do?" "Nothing loud," I said. "Nothing harsh." I squeezed her hand gently. Sometimes the loudest justice is the kind spoken in silence. She didn't say anything. She just leaned forward and rested her forehead against my shoulder. A small, trembling gesture that felt like the world finally setting down its weight. And in that moment, in that quiet corner of her cafe, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: freedom. For her. And for me. I walked home slowly that evening, letting the cool air settle against my skin. The folder felt lighter under my arm now, not because its weight had changed, but because the burden that built it had finally begun to lift. When I reached my porch, I sat on the old wooden step and let the quiet wrap around me. The world didn't look different. Same street, same houses, same rustle of leaves. Yet something inside me had shifted. For months, I'd watched my daughter dim her own light, apologize for her own strength, and believe the smallness others forced on her. But that day, I saw something return to her eyes. Not victory, not triumph, just dignity. The kind she should never have been taught to surrender. I thought back to the moment I found her on her knees, scrubbing the floor of a cafe she built with her own imagination, and I whispered to myself the title I carried through this journey. When I found my daughter scrubbing toilets in her own cafe. That sentence had lived with me like a shadow, a bruise I pressed without meaning to, a truth too painful to repeat aloud. But now, repeating it didn't hurt the same way, because the story didn't end there. It ended with her standing taller, learning the strength of her own voice, and seeing, maybe for the first time in a long time, that she wasn't alone in the fight. As for Gloria, I didn't need her apology. Some people never offer one, and I learned long ago that closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from knowing you protected someone you love with patience, not rage. The older I get, the more I believe this. Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed, not through shouting, but through steady, deliberate truth. And maybe that's the real lesson in all this. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it moves slowly, quietly, like a door being unlocked after years of being stuck. And once it opens, you finally breathe again. So I'll leave you with this thought. If someone you love is being dimmed by another person's shadow, be the one who brings back the light, softly, steadily, and with a strength that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. If this story spoke to you, tell me in the comments what part stayed with you. And if you'd like to hear more quiet truths like this one, I'd be grateful if you subscribed.